How's it going? This is Greg with howtobuildgames.com. I'm going to teach you how to build games, both from a design and a development perspective, and we're going to get into specifics about what each of those things mean a little bit later. I'm going to start off with a quote that I think is relevant. I'm not sure who said it. I couldn't find that in the 2 minutes I looked. It said the first million is the hardest. The first $1 million is the hardest. And, well, that seems reasonable. There's not a lot of millionaires out there. I guess there are, but I don't know any. Anyway, the first $1 million is the hardest. And I think that's true. In our context, so is building your first game. And getting it out the door, getting it shipped. But figuring out where to start and starting and doing it and finishing it is a huge deal. Now, no promises on the first one, but we can definitely help with the second one. So, over the course of this, I'm going to be talking about game design and development, and I'm going to lay out my bigger vision for howtobuildgames.com in another video. Take a little more time, talk about why I've chosen Unity, what the differences between game design and game development, some of the different aspects that I'm going to focus on in all of the videos. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and show you the beginnings of what we're going to build. I've already got Unity loaded up, and don't worry, we're going to start from scratch. From, hey, I just downloaded Unity, and that's it. I will assume a small amount of programming knowledge. You don't have to have a lot. If you know what a function is and does, and what a basic loop is and does, then you should be in good shape. If not, that's okay too. That might require a little extra homework on your part, but it really should not be a big problem. I'm going to go through everything. I'm not going to be like, hey, watch me. I'm going to speed the video up 8 times and then go back and show you what I did. At least not for a while, if ever, because I don't think that's a good way to learn. I'm going to go through and do it and show you how to do it and talk about why I do it, more importantly. I've been doing this a while. I've been programming a while. I've been building games for a while. So I'm hoping to be able to pass some of that experience on. Before I go further, I should say if you want to get all the source code and everything, that's all free. You just have to go to howtobuildgames.com and sign up for the email list. And just go right here and go to howtobuildgames.com, which I should have had pulled up already. And coming in August 2013, well, it didn't actually, but hey, coming in November 2013. And as it says, it's going to be a free series. I'm going to be working primarily on desktop, but everything that I do, you're going to be able to also use. I say everything. Probably everything I do, you'll be able to use on iPhone, iPad, and Android and mobile, because that's the way that I build stuff. That's the way that I've learned to build it. That's a good way to build it. You want to build things so that they run on the desktop, but you can also run them on mobile. That's how I build everything that I do, with a few very rare exceptions. Some games don't translate well to mobile. Some games don't translate well to desktop. And I've got a few examples of things I've made of each, but it's not going to be for a lack of, we can't do it. If one doesn't run on mobile, it'll be because we chose not to, or mobile's not powerful enough, or doesn't offer what we need, or whatever. So, anyway, if you go to howtobuildgames.com, sign up list should be right here. Sign up for that. You'll get access to the newsletter, and we will show you how to build games. So let's talk about what we're going to build. I've already got Unity pulled up. In this first lesson, I'm going to cover firing up Unity, creating a scene, creating a script, creating a cube, and once you hit play, then you can click on the cube and it changes to red. Isn't that exciting? Bam, you just built your first Unity app. you'll probably not make your first $1 million with this one. However, somebody did the stupid test, and hey, click on the button. But we're not going there. But you have to start somewhere, and this is a great place to start. You've got something on the screen that you can interact with. There's a lot of different things you can do with that, from making simple user interface elements to adding some basic interactivity to your game. That's a more important place to start than it looks like. It's important to build the foundations right, because if you don't, nothing else works well later on. Just taking a look at the scene, basically, yep, you got a camera and a cube, which is all we need to start that out. So we're going to start the lesson with, hey, I can click a cube and it changes colors. We're going to end lesson 1 with, and now I've got a grid of cubes. As I click them, they change colors, but they stay changed colors, and after I click 5 of them, they disappear. So 3, 4, 5. And they're all suspended in space nicely, which is what we'd like. And so that's where we're going to end lesson 1. And all these lessons are going to kind of build on top of each other, and so that may not seem very exciting either, but we're getting there. The next lesson is going to be this, building off the end of the first one. Same thing as before, except this time, hey, the blocks drop. And you might think, wow, that's kind of cool. That might make a cool game like, Candy Crush or Bejeweled or something. Blocks drop. Yeah, okay, that's the beginning of a game, right? And if you click everything nicely and you've got, a few things, you think, yeah, okay. Between lesson 2 and 3, we're going to take that, expand on that to this. And so if you think, yeah, that'd be great to make a block drop game, well, you'd be wrong. Let me show you why. So if you got a few more blocks and you click a little bit faster, then it starts getting a little more chaotic. And this is why you don't really want to use real physics in your game, because it won't go well. I chose a physics-based game for my first game. It was not a good idea. It made things a lot harder than it had to be. You do want physics in the sense of blocks are going to drop, but you don't need real in-game built physics for that. Typically, that when you see things like Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog jumping and falling, that's not actual real physics in the game running. It's simulated physics. It's simulated gravity, which is a much better choice and way easier to control. We'll get into some of that kind of stuff later, but this is basically where we're going to be after a couple of lessons, and even something like this you could begin to make a game out of. And so maybe it was how many blocks can you knock over in 5 clicks or 10 clicks, or maybe you could do how many clicks does it take to knock the whole tower down. What's the least amount of clicks you could do? And so a lot of what I do is going to be kind of non-linear like that. It's not going to necessarily be, hey, here's the right way and the wrong way. Here's a 75-part series on how to make an RPG. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm looking at a wider scope of teaching game design and development, and I think there are more important lessons along the way. And even if what you want to make is an RPG, you've got to learn the concepts of game development first. And things like this will show you what's going on, and the basic concepts that you take away from this of, hey, okay, now I've got this, now we're going to keep score, Now we're going to put something over here to track when blocks are falling off this edge and when blocks are falling off this edge. You'd be surprised how much you'll learn from doing something like that about how things should run. Myself, when I'm doing tutorials, and I still do tutorials all the time of all sorts because there's all kinds of stuff that I've yet to learn. A lot of times I'll get inspired and have an idea and go, ooh, it'd be kind of cool if we did this. And then I'll go and do that. And stop right in the middle of a tutorial and build something else that I'm inspired to do. That's a good thing. Hopefully you'll do that while you're watching these. Hopefully you'll come back and finish it out as well. I try to go back and finish the tutorial and see and learn whatever they were trying to teach. But it's good to get inspired, and it's good to tinker around with things and go, ooh, what if what if we turned gravity off, or what if we made gravity go the other way, and all the blocks were falling up instead. It's good to do that kind of thing because that's how you learn. You learn by going, hey, I wonder how you would do this, and going to Google and finding out. And typically, if you've got that question, somebody else had it as well, and you can find it, find the answer. And that's what I kind of hope to instill along the way. And we're going to do that with some tutorials where we work through a tutorial and then we stop in the middle of that, get inspired, and build something out, build a game out from it. So I'm going to talk about some game ideas along the way, how to get inspired, how to turn a technique into a game, as well as, a technique from a tutorial into a game, as well as, hey, here's the kind of game I want to build. What do I need to do to build that? And kind of spec out, make the specifications for what a game might look like, and so what you might need to do. So anyway, that is the end of the beginning, and I hope you stick with it. We're going to learn a lot of cool stuff. For me, the first video tutorial is the hardest, but hey, I think it's going all right so far. So that's where we're going to start. All right, so let's get started. As I said before, make sure you go to howtobuildgames.com. There's nothing much there now except the email sign-up form. Please sign that up. We don't spam. Trust me, I've been doing email a long time. I really hate spam. This is just to get information out. I'll probably email once a month with a list of the new videos that have come out, some other things like that. That's also the way to get access to the source code and some other stuff that will be exclusive to the email list. You really want to be on the email list, I promise. You don't have to. You can just watch the videos and type stuff in, and that's fine. But there's a lot of benefit to being on the email list. So howtobuildgames.com. We are going to have other stuff there later on. I don't want to talk too much about that, but I've gotten to know a number of developers over the last several years, and you're going to be hearing from other people besides just me about how to build games and how to market them and things like that down the line. Anyway, let's go ahead and start. So I'm going to fire up Unity. This is Unity 4. If you're using Unity 3, pretty much it's going to look differently as far as the layout, but everything else will be the same pretty much, and I'll actually make some distinctions in the code because I still use Unity 3 because I've got Unity 3 Pro. If you've got Unity 3 Pro and some of the add-ons, that's a good reason to still be using Unity 3. Otherwise, I think you probably ought to be using Unity 4. The latest version has a lot of great stuff in it. 4.3 is supposed to come out sometime in the not too distant future, I think, and that's got a whole bunch of 2D stuff, and we'll cover some of that stuff as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new project and put it in my How to Build Games starting lesson 01. And you can do whatever you'd like and browse, put it wherever you want. Typically, when you create a new project, you get the option to load all these things in. As a rule, you don't need any of them. Some of them can be helpful, and you can go through and add them all in and then just use what you need, especially if you're just playing around, but it's going to add a whole bunch of extra stuff to your project, which will probably just confuse you more than anything else at the beginning. Some of these I've got will be a little different than what you've got because I've bought a lot of things from the asset store over time. The asset stores can be great for finding stuff, but typically I don't start with anything. You can always go back and add these in later. That's not a big deal when you find out, oh, I do need a character controller or whatever. So I always start out without adding any of those. And those are just pre-made packages of different things that can help you in different ways. Like the character controller is cool, but again, you don't need it. And we're going to start from absolutely scratch with nothing. So create that. It's going to take just a moment. All right, so here we go. Brand new Unity scene. This is the default layout because I wanted to make sure that it looked basically like other people are used to it looking. I'm going to make another lesson, probably that'll be a short video where I set up Unity the way that I really like to work with it. And if you don't have a widescreen monitor, you might need to reconfigure this a little bit. They've got some other options, like if you're using widescreen, that's a pretty good option. If you're using a tall screen, that's a good option. That's a lot closer to what Unity 3 was like. If you've got like an old school monitor, like I used for a long time, 1600 by 1200 kind of thing, this is probably what you want to use. So actually, let's go ahead and switch back to wide. And if you're brand new to Unity, that's okay. Follow along. I'm gonna stay in the default at least for this part of this lesson. Don't be too freaked out about all the different windows and all the different things. I'm probably going to do another video where I kind of talk about what some of these things are. There's also a lot of good information like that already out there. I don't want to cover all that stuff too much. It would be good if you are a little bit familiar with Unity. You watch the videos when Unity first comes up. Welcome screen. You go through and watch these videos here. Check out some of the basics. That's a really great way to start. I don't assume a lot of programming knowledge. I assume a little bit. You know what a function is. You know what loops are. But that's about all you need to know. And even if you don't know that, watch. You can go do some research on your own if you want. Because I'm not going to go into the very, 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 very basics. But you should still be able to follow along and without too much trouble. So anyway, let's get into it. I'm dying to start coding. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a couple of folders. So real quick overview of everything here. Everything in Unity comes down to scenes. And so right here in our assets, I'm going to make a couple of folders. I'm going to make one called scenes. I'm going to right clicking. I'm going to right click, create one called scripts. You can also over here right click, create one called art. And you can get 2D and 3D and GUI, and you can really get much more elaborate with all this if you'd like. But art, scenes, scripts is a great place to start. It's going to store them in alphabetical order over here. You've got some favorites. We'll deal with that and how to do those later. So this is going to be all of the assets that you've got access to within this project. You can search right here. I always name my scenes with _SCN so that I can type this here and get a list of everything and see it. That's one of the ways that I like to work, but we'll cover workflow tips and tricks some other time. So this is your project folder. This is everything that's contained within the project. This is the console. Any kind of debug messages that you put out or that come out from Unity are going to come here. Go back and click on Project. Hierarchy. This is what's contained in your current scene. And as I said, everything in Unity comes down to scenes, and we'll get back to that. That'll make more sense in a minute. This is everything that is in your current scene. Currently in the scene is a camera, because that's what they all start with. There's nothing more. This is your scene view. If I hold down Alt on the PC, I can kind of look around and see the camera. If I click over here, this is the game view. Now the game view is showing us the view from that camera. There's not much we can do in the game view. When you hit play, it will automatically jump to the game view, and you'll start seeing things here if there's anything to see there. I'm going to click that again to stop. Go back to the scene view. Much of the time you're going to spend in the scene view unless you're playing the game, although that's not always the case. We'll get to that again later. The inspector, this is a list of all the different properties and things for whatever is currently selected. And since main camera is currently selected in our scene, then this inspector is going to have all the details for the main camera. If I click over here where nothing is selected, that goes blank, and again there, it's on. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a game object. Everything within Unity pretty much is considered a game object. That's going to be the bulk of what you deal with anyway. There are a few other things like cameras and stuff. Most things are game objects, including lights, basic objects, things like that. We're going to create game object, create other, cube. Because we're just doing a simple example, we're just going to start with a basic cube. You could import this from a 3D app if you needed to, but in our case, a cube will be fine. So we're going to start with that. So we've put that. It creates it at 0, 0, 0 in 3D space. If you click in the game view, you see, oh, well, the camera is looking at it. Now, one thing you can do, you notice with these areas or tabs, you can click and drag and kind of pull that off and move it around. So I'm going to move it over here so that they're side by side, so that we can kind of get a better idea of things. I'm using my mouse wheel over here in the scene view to zoom in and out, hold down Alt, and then click and drag to move around. If you've used any 3D software, this kind of stuff is probably pretty familiar to you. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to take the camera, move it a little bit closer, because we don't need the camera to be like way far out from what we're doing for this. So now we've got this, we've got a cube, we've got the camera pointing at the cube. What you might notice over here is that everything looks a little different. Over here you can see it, you've got some lighting going on. Over here you got nothing. That's because there's no lights in the scene. This gives us a view without all the lighting and things affecting it, although you can toggle that on and off here. That shows real lights in the scene, the built-in lighting. So we're using the built-in lighting, which gives us a little bit of light already in here. So what we need to do to our scene, and if you hit play, it does nothing. It goes to the game view, and well, there's a cube sitting there. What we need to do though is we need to add a light. So we're going to go over here, game object, create other. We're going to create a directional light. Directional lights, I'm going to move it up and over, although it really doesn't matter. Directional light is kind of like sunlight in the scene. And again, I'm holding down Alt to move to the eye, and then just clicking and dragging to kind of move things around. That's how I navigate most of the time. I'm not going to mention that every time, but just so you kind of get a feel. And again, if you watch the introductory videos from Help, Welcome Screen, those will help you understand all this stuff a little better and how to navigate around and things like that. So the directional light acts kind of like a sun in that it lights up everything in the scene. So even though the directional light is way over here and it looks like it's aiming down there, nowhere near our cube, it's still going to light it up. So that's not a bad thing to have one of those in there. to generally light things up. If we just wanted part of our scene lit up, we could use a spotlight, which is just like, in a movie theater, it's coming from one point, aiming down on an area. Point light gives out light in all the directions, but we'll mess with all the different kinds of lights later. Directional light is a great place to start. So we click on our cube. In the scene view, if you're clicking in the game view, it's not going to do anything because you really cannot interact with the game view at all when you're not playing the game. Again, mouse wheel, navigating around here. So again, we click on the camera, that picks it over here, and it shows us all the details over there. We click on the cube, it selects it over here, and it shows all the details over here. So what we want to do, I'm going to start off very, very, very simple. I want to make something so that when we click on the cube, it changes color. That's about as basic as you could get, but that still gives us some interactivity, and I think that's a good place to start. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over here to our scripts. I'm going to click on that twice. I'm going to create a C# script. Now, don't freak out that we're using C# and not JavaScript. If you talk to people and people said, oh, start with JavaScript, it's easier. Yeah, it's really not. It's about the same in difficulty as far as the language goes, but almost any code that you find from anybody that's been using Unity more than 6 months is going to be in C#. Almost all the example code you find. Now on the Unity site, typically they've got it in JavaScript and C#, most of the examples, but trust me, C#, it's not that much harder to learn. It's very similar. It's worth the extra effort. And we're going to be converting stuff from JavaScript to C# on the fly as we go in some cases when we're pulling samples of code off the internet. You'll see it's just not that different. So create C# script. Now it's waiting. We can type in the first name. I'm going to type in block _ start and hit enter. Now the C# script is created. The underscore is shift dash or shift minus sign. If you have not used it, I use it extensively for different reasons. I don't think you can put a space in there. It's probably a bad idea to try. But basically, I will use the underscore to block out things like that where typically people might use a space. That's something that most programmers do because spaces are just not allowed in many things. And so a lot of my file names and things like that use underscores. Anyway, again, the inspector script is showing us what's happening over here with block start. It's giving us a preview of the script. And what you'll notice is that it has gone ahead and named, it's made something called a class and given some basic things in there for initialization and updating once per frame based on the name that we gave it. So if you made a different name, you hit enter and it just came up as new mono behavior. You have to right click and rename it. Make sure that you also rename it within the script. Now you can't do that over here. You can't edit it over here. We'll get to that in just a moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to double click on the script here. That's going to open up MonoDevelop, which is installed with Unity, and we're going to be able to start typing things. You'll note some color-coded things. Comments start with 2 forward slashes, and so this line is a comment, this line is a comment here. Typically, you're not going to need to mess with anything outside of the brackets. You might note that the open and closing brackets, when you click on one, the other is highlighted. That's so to help you not be confused. For now, we don't need any of this stuff. Leaving start in here is not necessarily a bad idea, We can use it for initialization if you've got certain things you want to set up a certain way. That's good. Leaving update in here is a very bad idea if we don't need it, because update is called once per frame, whether there's anything in there or not. And even if it's empty, like it is here, it's still going to use up cycles. It's still going to use up processing power, or cycles. That's really important on mobile. It's not as big of a deal on Windows or Mac or Linux or whatever, but it's a huge deal. It can be a huge deal on mobile, especially if you've got a lot of these scripts that have an empty update running. So first thing I do when I make a new C# script is delete that. We can always go back and make it again by typing, just like we had, void update, open close parentheses, open close brackets, and now it's exactly the same as it was before. We didn't mess anything up by deleting it, so we don't need it. We're going to remove it. I'm going to go ahead and delete this as well. Now, what we do need is a couple of functions. We're looking for basically something that's going to work when we click on something with a mouse. And so if we go to Google, so we'll go to google.com and we'll type in Unity3D mouse click. And so that's kind of what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to say, okay, I'm in Unity3D, I want to find a mouse click. So the top things are typically going to be the ones that are going to give you the best results. Docs.unity3d.com, we can look right there and go, oh, okay, that's the official Unity3D documentation. Answers.unity3d.com is a community-run resource, also very, 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 very useful. And what you'll find typically is that if you have a question, so did somebody else. So how to perform a mouse click on a game object. We can click on that second option and see, hey, here's what we're trying to do. Okay, input, get mouse button down. Yeah, okay. Oh, look, you can use the OnMouseDown function in a script attached to your cube as long as it has a collider. Well, that sounds like exactly what we want. But beware that it doesn't work on mobile devices. Right now, this isn't going to be on a mobile device, but most of the stuff that I build and show you how to build, I'm going to show how to run on a mobile device. We'll address that later, though. For now, again, starting out from scratch, OnMouseDown looks like a great way to learn. So we're going to start with that. And so here's the example. It says function OnMouseDown, application load level, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. And it says here again, hey, this doesn't work on touchscreen. Use event class instead. So this works for us for here now. I'm going to select that and then right click and copy. Minimize this, go back over here, right click and paste, and yay, we've got the beginning of what we need. Except we don't need to load a level. So we're going to select that and delete it, and I'm going to output a debug statement instead. The way that you do this is you type debug with a capital D, which is important, and a period, and then it gives you some options. We're going to use log, which you can select or type. I prefer typing, but that's okay. Debug.log got a mouse click. Alright, so the debug log statement is going to put out whatever's between the quotes. Make sure you've got the semicolon at the end. Make sure that you save by hitting Control S or Command S on the Mac. If it's got a little star right there by the name, that means you have unsaved changes in here. So I'm going to hit that. I'm going to go back to Unity. When I click back on Unity over here, Unity is going to compile it and let me know if everything worked. You know, we've got a problem. Now if we click over here in the console, we'll see even more. Oh, type or namespace function could not be found. This is okay, and actually I knew it was going to do that. And I'll show you why. So I'm going to double click on this error. That's going to take me straight to the line. Well, it should anyway. I think because I've got different versions of Unity and MonoDevelop installed, it doesn't work. Typically, when you click this, it's going to take you straight to the line. I'm going to Alt-Tab back over. It's got me set up on the right line. So, function could not be found. I'll tell you why. Function is JavaScript. This whole function we just pasted in is JavaScript, and you might be like, oh no! Well, that's okay. Watch. We're going to convert it to CSharp. So we're going to take function, delete that, and type void, and then click somewhere else and save it. Bam! We just converted JavaScript to CSharp. Seriously, yes. And so now we go over here and click, and that error goes away because there are no errors. So now we're going to hit play, and remember, you got to do it in the game window. We're going to click it, and nothing happens, which is okay, and this is important too. We've got a script over here on the project, block start. It compiles, it runs. Why didn't the mouse thing work? Is probably what you're wondering. Well, here's why. This is not in our scene yet. It's in our project, but it's not in our scene. And so now we don't pull it up here. You can click and drag it. We don't just drop it into the scene hierarchy. You have to put it on a specific object. There's a couple of different ways you can do that. I can click and drag it to one of these specific items. If you want to drag it to cube, you can do it that way. If I want to click and drag it to this object in the scene window, you can do it that way. If I want to click on cube and click and drag it over here, we can do it that way. If I want to add a component listed in scripts and block start, we can do it that way. Or add component, and you can just put, hey, an underscore, look, the search functionality worked. So my preferred method is typically either to click and drag into here or there, or sometimes just over here. So it doesn't matter whether you click and drag over there. I'll undo that, click and drag it right here. I'll undo that, click and drag it up here. And I'll undo that, and I'll go here and start. And same exact result every time. And so we get the block start script, which tells us which script we're looking for. And now the script is in the scene. So now when we click on cube, we see, hey, block start. So now when we hit play and we go to the console to look for the information, and now when we click on it, it says, hey, I got a mouse click. So that's the very beginning. That's the good place to start. Now, you might say, well, why do I have to type it all in and then put it on the object too? I ought to be able to just click on it and it works. Well, there's actually a really good reason for that we'll get to in just a minute. So let's go ahead and make it a little more fancy. Okay, well, it worked that time. I'm going to double click on my script here. That's going to open up the script editor. What we're going to do now is do what we talked about before, which is going to be changing the color when we click. And so, again, if we go back over here and we type Unity3D change color on click. How to change color of object on mouse click. Okay, well, that's going to give us some options based on the color picker. Well, that's not exactly what we want. Oh, hey, look. On mouse over renderer, material color equals color blue. Oh, so that's what we want. And it's going to take a little bit of time. Yes, I knew what I was looking for and how to ask for it, but my point is that, again, from the Unity answers or the Unity docs, most of the stuff you want to know is there. You may have to type a couple of different ways to figure out exactly how to get to where you want to go, but most of the information is there. So that's what we need. Renderer.material.color equals color blue. And so we're going to right click, copy that, minimize this, and go over here. Now I'm going to go to the next line. I'm going to right click, I'm going to paste, and is it that easy, you wonder? Well, let's find out. We hit save, we go over here, don't see any errors anywhere. Okay, I can clear this out, although clear on play is on by default, which is nice, so that as soon as I hit play, that clears out. Oh, as soon as I click, it turns blue, and it stays blue. So that's cool, but maybe we want to make it not stay blue whenever we click. So again, you know, we've got some basic interactivity, and it didn't work that time, of course. So along the same way that I went to, you know, that I found OnMouseDown, I found that there's another one called OnMouseUp. I'm going to go ahead, and again, these are parentheses and these are brackets. That's very important to note the difference. We can put in another debug log if we want. Mouse is up. Go to the end of the line, and then renderer. You want the lowercase one. Case is very important. Dot, and then you see all the different options for the renderer. Material, and you want singular, not plural, just like above. Dot, and then again we see some other options. Color, okay, equals. Now again, note capital letter. We're basing all this off what's up here. So color dot. Oh look, we got a whole bunch of different colors. So if mouse down is blue, let's make mouse up white, and then semicolon. Gotta have a semicolon at the end. And if you don't, and you move off, you'll see a little error there. Typically that means, hey, there's a problem on the line above this. So we go back, we put that there, we save, and so now on mouse down, it's going to change the color to blue, and mouse up is going to change the color to white. So let's go back, let's try it. Alright, little thing that was over here for a moment, that's Unity recompiling stuff. Let's go over here, get ready in our console, let's watch, let's see. Mouse down and mouse up. And so, however long I hold it, when I let go, mouse click, mouse up. So this is cool, right? We've got some very, very, very basic functionality. Now, first thing I want to do from this point is I want to save my scene. And so I'm going to go up to File and Save. Saving the project is good every once in a great while. That saves project settings, things like that. Saving your scene is the default Control S. You want to do this on a pretty regular basis. Save your scene, and so it defaults to where we're at. And you remember the three folders we created at the beginning, art, scenes, and scripts. We're going to go into scenes. We're going to give it a name. I'm going to call it, and we'll call it mouse click lesson _ SCN, and hit enter. Now in projects, if if we look in our scenes, hey, there's our mouse click lesson scene. So we click on that, we're already in it, so it's not going to do anything fancy, but that's our scene. So you have to save your scene changes. Consider that kind of like saving your Photoshop file as you're working along and doing things and making changes. And so what's saved in the scene is that we've got a cube, we've got a light, we've got a camera. Let's make another scene. This is where it's going to get really cool. So let's make a new scene. And so now again our scene has nothing. But this one's going to be a lot easier. We've got the same basic camera. We're going to add a cube. Okay. We're going to add a light. I'm going to zoom out a little bit with my mouse wheel. I'm going to click on this arrow to constrain it to that axis. Move in a little bit. Click on this one to move there. Okay. So we click on our cube. We got nothing. We got our script. We're going to drag that over. Now it has that. We hit play. And again, we just created this whole scene from scratch. And look at that. Just like that. We've got the same functionality. Now, this is where it gets really cool. So you might have thought, well, you know, it says on click, change color. Why did I have to drag it to the cube and all that? Watch this. So I'm going to move this over a little bit. With this, hit edit, duplicate, and drag that over a little bit, and edit and duplicate, and drag that over a little bit, and edit and duplicate, and drag that over a little bit, and we'll do one more just to be fun. Edit, duplicate, or Control D if you're a shortcut person, and you should be if you're not, honestly. I'm trying not to use a lot of shortcuts in this because you can be really fast with using shortcuts, which is good when you're working and bad when you're teaching. But that is a good way. Learn the shortcuts. If you want to be really efficient, learn the keyboard shortcuts. Use them, love them, embrace them. So we've got our 5 blocks now. So watch this. So hit play. Now, we didn't do anything except duplicate the block. But as we click on each one, that functionality is there. So as I go over here and click on each different one, it's got that cube. It's got the block start script that we put on there. So now we can save this scene. Now, if you're in a scene that so if we were in the first scene and we modified it and we want to save it as something different, we use save scene as. Again, just like Photoshop or anything else. Since we created a new scene, we can go in, we just hit save. It knows we haven't saved the scene before, so it prompts us for a name. Assets, scenes, we'll call this multi-cubes _ SCN. Now, you don't have to mouse click lesson _ SCN, multi-cubes _ SCN. You don't have to put that on there. Unity knows that you know it's a scene, but there's a really useful reason why I do that. So I'm going to go up to the search box. I'm going to type in _, and it immediately filters to everything that's got an underscore. So I've got my script, I've got my scenes, and if I keep typing and do SCN, then it's going to immediately jump and show me now only the scenes that I've got. Once you get into a big project with a lot of stuff, you will be really glad you had this in there. And there's other things you can do too, like _test SCN. And again, the SCN, it doesn't have to be SCN. That's just what I like to use for scenes. It could be, Bob. And so _Bob is all your scenes. And, if that helps you remember it, go for it. But this is a really easy way to get to stuff very quickly and navigate through your scene files. And trust me, once you get to a point where you've got, 10 or 12 folders and subfolders, and you're looking for a specific piece of artwork, or you want to quickly filter to all your scenes, especially if you're using Unity 3.5. Before we get to the favorites over here, which I'll cover those later in another video. It's really, really, really helpful to be able to filter things here. So anyway, that's where we are going to stop. We've got some scenes. We've got some basic things. We can click on them. If you wanted to, I'm going to grab all of those and then hit Control-D to duplicate them and move them, and Control-D to duplicate them and move them, and Control-D to duplicate them and move them. And yes, now we have a 4x5 grid of things that every time we click on it, it changes color. And I know that might not seem like a lot, but that is basic interactive functionality. So instead of clicking and just changing a color, you could have a button where clicking this triggered that. You could use this for a simple user interface so that when you click it, it changes from an on button to an off button and things like that. There's a ton of stuff you can do with this. So we're going to stop there. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please remember to go to the website at howtobuildgames.com. Sign up for the email list. That is the key to getting the source code and the packages and everything. It's all free. All this content is going to be free on YouTube and free when you go to my website and sign up on the email list. I think it'll be worth your time. I've spent a lot of time doing this stuff. I'm looking forward to communicating some of that. I know this lesson may not have been terribly exciting. Had a lot of extra content that others won't, like a little bit about me, a little bit about Unity, a little bit about what I'm doing. Lessons from here on out, aren't going to have that much stuff about that. They will be mostly content, mostly learning. And that's all I've got. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure you sign up for the email list at howtobuildgames.com, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.